I'm Jen Brown, and you are listening to the World is Wrong podcast.
Now, I have a question for you.
Yes?
Did you watch all the way through the credits?
I haven't watched it in a really long time.
Oh, you didn't get I thought you were going to watch it today. That's why. So you haven't seen...
No, I did.
Oh.
I did, but I think I forgot to... Hold on, I thought I let it run.
I had never watched till the end, and I just happened to, and there's a whole post-credit...
What?
Sequence.
What the fuck is wrong with me? Oh my God. Well, I'm doing it right now because I had no idea.
Okay.
How did I not? I let it run, and I let it run for a while, and I was like, well, I guess nothing's going to happen. I guess I don't remember a post thing. And so I turned it off, and now I'm like, you ding dong.
We're here to tell you how the world is wrong. The world is wrong about Okja!
Welcome to The World is Wrong, an extremely positive podcast where we celebrate films and film artists the world is wrong about. I am one of your hosts, and my name is Andras Jones.
And my name is Brian Connolly, and I'm the other host.
You're the other host because today we're having a guest co-host who chose this film. That is the fabulous Jen Brown, your fellow Austinite. Tell me something you know about Jen Brown.
She's a very nice lady. I've not interacted with her a lot, but the few times I have, usually around the Alamo Draft House. She's just very pleasant to be around. Knows a lot about horror movies, way more than I ever will. And I'm really happy that she's back for season 2. I feel like we're starting to get into who kind of our repeat guests are going to be in the rest of our lives. It's nice. It's nice to have friends, Andras.
Yeah, it is. Whether that friend is a genetically modified super pig or Jen Brown. And Jen has some very exciting news that was announced basically in between when she and I recorded this episode and when we're recording this intro. She has a show called Genre Graveyard that she hosts with her co-host Phantasma. And they had the show, it was on El Rey, the network, until El Rey shut down. And now it has been picked up and you can watch it for free on the Roku channel, either their website or their app. And if you love genre film, you won't be able to miss, or sorry, you certainly could miss it if you wanted to, but you won't want to miss unique interviews with acclaimed indie directors such as Nacho Vigalondo, Isa Lopez, and more. So be sure to tune in. And I'm not reading that. I just made that up off the top of my head. It's a fun show, and I do recommend it. Anything that Jen does, I want to support, and you should as well. So let's go to a clip now, and then we'll come back and we'll talk with you about it after I'm done talking with Jen.
There might be spoilers. There might be spoilers. There might be spoilers.
Last night in South Korea, Mirando employees were securing their super pig when a young girl suddenly stepped in and tried to stop them. These extraordinary events began earlier in the day with a highly organized pig-napping attempt made by the Animal Liberation Front.
I wouldn't worry too much, Luce. The ALF technically failed. They weren't even able to take the product.
Yeah, it's a kerfuffle over nothing. We shouldn't make a big deal out of it.
It actually means our security here in the U.S. is so airtight they wouldn't even think about breaking in. Which is why they went all the way to Korea.
The ALF hasn't been in the headlines for a number of years, but they're back in the spotlight after today's chaotic events.
Well, the good news is that the pig is on its way to New York now.
Right. The Best Super Pig Fest will continue as planned.
Significant damage to Mirando's stock price seems inevitable.
Yep. Mirando is completely fucked.
Mirando, that's your current employer, correct?
Yep. I don't care. They fucked, not me. They fucked up.
I know what they're calling me, those ALF fuckers. They're calling me a psychopath.
You're not a psychopath. They're the psychopaths, right, Miss Mirando? They're narcissists.
Do narcissists wear balaclavas?
Crazy radicals have been calling us psychopaths since the 60s. You're a psychopath. Your sister was a psychopath. Your father was a psychopath.
Well, Daddy was a psychopath, Frank. I mean, that's hardly an unfair slur. What did you do in the war, Daddy? You manufactured the napalm that made everybody's skin fall off.
Okja, the last film directed by Bong Joon-ho before his Oscar-winning Parasite in 2019. Even though it made little impact in 2017, I wouldn't be surprised if, when people start digging back into Bong Joon-ho's filmography, as I did in preparation for this conversation, it becomes one of his most popular. I'd never even heard of it until it was suggested to me by today's guest co-host, Jen Brown. Now, having given myself a crash course in the director's filmography, it might be my favorite. Okja is a monster movie in the mold of King Kong, but instead of a giant ape killed for his love of a blonde lady, we have a genetically modified super pig who is saved by the unstoppable force of a child's love. It's a film with a cruel and elegant sense of humor and a whole lot of sweetness ground into the mix of this impossible burger of a movie written by the director with frank screenwriter Jon Ronson. In brief, Tilda Swinton plays twin sisters, the daughters of a famed industrialist psychopath who run an international meat corporation that has genetically modified super pigs to dominate the meat market. One of these pigs, Okja, of the title, is raised by a devoted girl named Mija, played by Seo-hyun, who lives with her grandfather in the jungly mountains of South Korea. We spend a good early chunk of the film cavorting with the girl and the pig, including a great little action-adventure set piece where Okja saves her life. When the corporation, represented by Jake Gyllenhaal's Johnny Wilcox, comes for their property, it leads to Mija's journey. Along the way, she is helped, hindered, and helped again by a group of animal rights activists led by Paul Dano with Stephen Yeun and Lily Collins, who you may remember from Rules Don't Apply. Will Mija save her pig? There will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen the film already and you don't want to know if the pig lives or dies, stop now, because we're going to unpack it all in my conversation with Jen Brown. Now, welcome to The World is Wrong, Jen!
Are you an animal lover too, Andras?
I am. I'm not, maybe not in the sense you mean. Maybe not in the sense you mean.
Bless you, Jake Gyllenhaal. Bless you. Never, no, I don't mean never before, but he is one of those actors who very often plays serious roles, but it is painfully, beautifully clear when he chooses things that he wants to do that he just wants to be a big old goober. He loves it. He loves goobing it up. And oh, Nelly, is he a big old gooey gobstopper in this movie. It's amazing.
Yes. Now, Jen, you turned me on to this film. Nary a week ago, I had never heard of this film. And
I was so surprised by that.
And I have to be honest, I had really not given Bong Joon-ho the attention that the whole world obviously has. And so it was but it was a great week of getting to rewatch ones that I hadn't really put in context, watch ones that I had heard of but hadn't given the time, and in the case of Mother, watched one that I'd never heard of at all. And and wow, yeah, this guy's pretty good. So but I don't want to be that guy. I really hate when I listen to a podcast and the host is talking about a director that I've been following for years, and they just are like, "Hey, Paul Thomas Anderson's great. I I just binge watched all of his films last weekend, and I think, like, okay, good. I hope you better have someone good to talk to, because you're useful in terms of having some good questions. So I hope I'll try and do that. But you turned me on to this film. Let's talk about first. We're in the month of Wrongtober. I asked you to pick a film that you felt both that the world was wrong about, and that one of the ways the world is wrong about it is that it is a horror film, but people don't usually think of it as a horror film. Would you like to unpack why you thought it qualified on that level?
Oh, absolutely. Well, before I get into the why it qualifies as a horror film, I'll just say right off why it qualifies as just an amazing film in general. I have been obsessed personally with Bong Joon-ho's work for over a decade at this point, easily, close to 2. The Host was the first movie of his I ever saw, and I was absolutely obsessed with it from the minute I saw it. I forced everyone I could to see it, prefacing it with, no, not the Stephenie Meyer movie. This is a very beautiful, horrifying, touching, but also unbelievably hilarious monster movie from South Korea. And people are like, oh, okay. I'm like, yes, very different movie. And since then, I've just, followed him to the ends of the earth, I would, at least film-wise. He really does, and you touched on it when you were describing Okja just in the beginning, the way that he combines, and this honestly goes for all of his films, but especially for Okja, his unique combination of humor along with very, very serious issues, and this beautiful lens and this absolute wholehearted sincerity that's really beautiful. And it's a lot of stuff to try to balance in one movie. And there's very few directors that do it as deftly as he does. And every single one of his movies are almost impossible to stick to one genre because they defy all genre. A lot of his movies do. It's hard to peg it with one. But I will say, the reason why I personally believe Okja to be a horror film, and very worthy of this, and when you tasked me with thinking of something, when I really sat down and thought about it, this was the first movie that popped into my head. When I really considered it, it was the first option that came to my head and was like, oh yeah, yes, absolutely. The first reason for it is that for 4 years now, marking when this movie came out in 2017 to now, I no longer eat pig. And that is a direct result of being saddened and terrified into realizing what I was doing. And this movie was definitely the nail in the coffin on pork products for me personally. I had been a vegetarian previously for about 7 years, and then I stopped because I was too poor to be a vegetarian and get protein. I was also Mexican, and pork is like the number one food group for us and in my family.
You're no longer poor, but you're still Mexican.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. You've said them both in the past tense. I just wanted to make sure. You had.
Oh no, I'm still poor.
Oh, okay. So clearly these are both still present, and yet somehow you're still willing to forego. Oh yeah. Well, let's back up here for a second, because I want to sort of, before we go fully down into the conversation about vegetarianism, I want us to come back to the film a little bit, just on the horror level of the film. People are going to make whatever choices they're going to make.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, you watch a movie where there's some guy killing a bunch of people. I don't need to explain to people that they probably shouldn't go and kill a bunch of people. That's the monster in this movie. And in this case, the monster in this movie, and this is one of the things that I thought was so interesting about it, and then in your suggestion, is that the monster, demonstrably, you can let me do that, is Okja, the gigantic pig. But at the same time, that's what the wonderful trick this movie does, which is why I thought of it like King Kong, is that, no, Okja is an innocent thing that is taken from her place and her people, and the real monster, and this is where what is the monster in this movie? Because there are people who are monstrous in this film. There are characters who are monstrous. There are characters who are sympathetic, who do monstrous things. Yep. There's a system that is monstrous, that we're told from the outset is sort of an inherited, it goes back generations. There is a system that is deeply implanted. Just as Mija and her grandfather are deeply implanted in their worlds, which there's relatively little horror there, except for the horror of potentially falling off a mountain, which is what a scene. God, so good.
I mean, it's just, you know, it starts off and you're like, oh my gosh, look at this sweet child adventure story about a girl and her super pit. Like, it just
could have just stayed there, right?
And sweet and
So let's delve in a little bit to the horrific aspects of this film. You want to start with you kind of wanted to, he was sort of like a heat-seeking missile to the performance of Jake Gyllenhaal. And I feel like his arrival on the scene is sort of, there's the opening where we see Tilda Swinton 1. Or like the Gwendolyn, the Gwendolyn version of Tilda Swinton's character in this at the beginning. And that's the monster, but the first appearance in the jungle of the monster, so it's kind of dressed like Charles Grodin in the 1970s King Kong, comes up the mountain wheezing and doing a great joke, because you hear his voice, and it's you hear this high voice and you see these two women, but they're not making any sounds, and then he emerges and he's the one who's talking like this.
Come here! All right. Oh, fucking hair, goddammit!
테레비 나오는 그 아저씨 맞죠? 맞아. 애니멀 매직. 왜? 에리엘 씨.
All the other super pigs were on flatland, accessible by car. Japan's one was 5 minutes from the airport. I noticed that you had to leave the fucking mountaintop, super pig, till the end, because you knew that the climb would rile me. Well, guess what? I'm riled.
Let's talk about him as a monster, because he is
an absolute monster. But also that particular scene is so specific to Bong Joon-ho. This is the perfect example of the sort of humor that he does so perfectly well, where he takes a normal scenario, a normal situation that anyone else would just film, like, they arrive up the mountain, everything's okay. But he puts the reality into the situation, but to such an overdone degree that it becomes beautiful physical comedy. It's very much like the scene in The Host, where the family's grieving, and it starts off and they're all grieving very normally, and then it progresses to so over the top that it turns into comedy. And that's very much what this opening scene is of these people. And it's also clearly making fun of Westerners. inability to be able to handle the real world and how unprepared they were for the reality of this trip. And then we get the gift that is Jake Gyllenhaal in this film. That is always on. He is never not on. And you get the idea that Johnny Wilcox, his character, who, you know, is very much, you know, your famous zoologist, you know, TV personality person, that he probably started out very genuine and really loving animals. And and this is never stated in the movie, but it feels very obvious from his performance and the way that the character proceeds, is that he has been corrupted by the company that he's, you know, essentially sold his soul to, and has become hypnotized by celebrity, in that he really cared about these animals, and now it's much more selfish love than it is a genuine caring. But that was whittled down by time. And again, we don't see it, or we're not told that specifically, but personally, I feel that is very apparent.
Yeah. I mean, I guess everyone's on a spectrum of their relationship to the monster in this film, which is capitalism and the meat industry. And
that's, I mean, all of his movies, almost all of his films, all touch on that. I mean, yeah.
So I wonder about, like, I feel like I've known people. He may have been good-hearted, but his interest.
Oh, he's not anymore.
I think his interest was, but it's people, and I want to say people like that, because I have strands of that in my own personality, and and they were stronger at different times. The ultimate goal of getting the attention and the gig and being the face of something is so much more. It's all performative. I mean, I think that's kind of what you see in different degrees when we get to my favorite characters. My favorite characters in the film are the ALF. I mean, I guess Okja and Mija, but I was just thinking, but the ALF group are, whenever they're involved in something, I'm so joyful. And at the same time, I feel like there's something like the criticism of a certain kind of activist. Like, I feel like they fit the mold that you're trying to fit on Johnny Wilcox a little bit better, in a way that, like, they're corrupted in a way that is, like, real and kind of hits home and you feel it. Whereas this guy, you know, he's a showman. And there's, again, nothing wrong with being a showman, but he's like that scene with his first scene with Okja. He's like, he's having real emotions, but he can't even.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, that back in the past, he initially got
maybe
into
the
this.
deep past, like when he was 8.
And that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. That in the very, very beginning. But then it wasn't that he loved animals. What truly happened was he realized he loved himself and the performity way more of it. And he turns into an absolute vile person. But there are hints that at some point he used to be a human being. He was corrupted beyond all corruption, and is just given in to what he's become.
He's
and
such
it's
an
very,
odd and
it's
wonderful
a very
character,
fun.
though.
It's such a fun character, like in an evil way.
So I guess we're on to the Mirando Corporation, and you know, I guess in a room when Jake Gyllenhaal's character is in a room with Tilda Swinton and Giancarlo Esposito, he really doesn't look like a monster so much, because
he doesn't.
Like, you want to talk about the true monsters in this film, even more than Tilda Swinton. You know, I guess one of the monsters that's hidden in this film, there's two things. One, Giancarlo Esposito is the mastermind monster of this film. The character, he was supposed to be played by Bill Nye, I'm told, and Bill Nye dropped out.
I didn't know that.
So there's two bits of horror. One is just his character and how easygoing he is and how much he's sort of like he's a normal person. He's not monstrous and crazy. He's Giancarlo Esposito, which is the other part of the horror. How come there has never been a movie that he's been the star of? He's been in every fucking movie in the world.
Right?
He's so good. Has nobody to... I mean, I went through his IMDb. Maybe I missed something. But I don't think he has ever starred in a movie. And that is insane. And if he has, we haven't seen it. And that's crazy.
I agree with you.
He needs his Boardwalk Empire. He needs his Steve Buscemi. Like, I get it. He's a character actor. But eventually, every character actor... gets a chance, like the good ones who are that big. Like, he stars in TV shows kind of as the heavy, but I want a movie with Giancarlo Esposito playing the fucking Denzel Washington old guy role. No offense, Denzel. I love you, but one of those, like, he needs a nobody, a Bob Odenkirk nobody. He needs someone. He needs a
I agree.
Anyway,
I agree.
That's the
1,000%.
horror. That's just my own personal horror that I see every time I see this great actor not getting an opportunity.
Underutilized.
But let's the real monster, a two-headed monster of Tilda Swinton as Lucy and Nancy Mirando.
Yep.
Did you feel like she was riffing on Elizabeth Holmes?
Oh God, it feels like she's riffing on a combination of people, right? So you've got Elizabeth Holmes. There's also a little bit of the Walton Walmart thing because it was taken over by the younger women who are really, really, really trying their best to repair this very negative image. That's been done to the company and trying their best. And so there's inspiration, I believe, from a lot of, I think Target has very similar, or just a lot of corporations where the younger generations are starting to, take power and try to right some of the wrongs that were done by their elders. But in this particular case, clearly realizes that that's impossible without lying. At least in the way that her, Mirando Corporation, her family want things to continue running. So it does feel, it feels inspired by, but not direct. There's not a direct correlation. I think it's bits and parts taken from real life people.
I thought that Nancy Mirando felt like if Hillary Clinton was played by Cloris Leachman's character in High Anxiety. Talking about fruit cups. She's doing that thing with her mouth.
Tilda is my motherfucking queen. That woman, I'm so obsessed with her. As an actor, she's been my absolute inspiration. I mean, I started acting before I saw her things, but, as when I first became aware of her work in my late teens and early 20s, I was like, yep, that's what I want to be that. She is just utter perfection, and her ability to portray these two women so very differently, and to do caricatures without making them feel like caricatures are her strength. She really is pretty fucking brilliant at it, because there are lots of tropey qualities to both of the characters that she plays, yet somehow I don't mean come off genuine as in they are genuine people, like in their actions, but genuine to that character, if you get what I'm saying.
like the Gyllenhaal character, particularly the Lucy Mirando.
Yes.
It's all performative.
Yes.
You have to assume, I generally, this is our attitude on the show, you assume that when someone is a director who is that much in control of their instrument, the points that they're making are intentional.
Yeah.
Or they're intentionally letting them hang there for you to think about.
Oh, yes.
Or else they would have edited them in a different way
yeah.
to not leave that hanging in the air. So this is a particular take on a particular kind of American.
Yep.
Because these are both American characters.
Oh, yeah.
And they're sort of ugly American stereotypes that he has chosen two great actors to turn up to 11 on. Like, he's not saying, okay, portray the reality of these situations or these types of people. He's like, no, turn it up, keep going. That's what I want. That's where I want you.
But
yes,
the thing is, in a weird way, and I don't. Maybe I'm not. I know I'm not the only person, because I've talked to other peers that feel the same way, but in certain circumstances, when you turn up the dial to that extreme level, it actually shows the truth in a brighter light. If that, you know what I mean? Like, it just, because it's so exaggerated, it allows you to be able to see the horrible truth behind the reality of it a little bit clearer than if it was just played naturalistically.
Yeah. It just keeps you in. It keeps you interested.
Yeah.
It is a film. Again, like I said, I'm late to the party, but I am not. But I am walking in and just being like, oh, wow, this is someone who has so many tools at his disposal.
Yes.
And it's just great. It's so... And this, I love this film so much, how it's making a point that is dear to my heart on so many levels. And at the same time, none of that matters. That's actually what, maybe if I was aware of it at all, maybe that's part of what might have kept me away. Whereas what I'll always remember about this film are the funny moments, the moments of like the sort of action adventure-y kind of moments, the satirical moments, and some of the horrific stuff, but it's horrific stuff that I don't feel is wanton. That's when I don't like horrific stuff in movies, when it just feels like this is, it's just like torture porn kind of thing. Right. And my sensitivity, we've talked about this, Jen. I'm very, but if it's something that I feel like I need it, it's worth it to have my nose ground into it a little bit. It's good. And as you were saying, with meat, the combination of meat and capitalism and genetic engineering,
right?
And all of these things are areas where I feel like, oh, that's worth making a $50 million movie about.
Right.
Which I don't want to get too sidetracked into this, but I don't know. So you look on IMDb or Wikipedia, and it says this film cost $50 million and only made $2 million. But Netflix, that's at the box office, right? Because this film is on Netflix, so anyone can see it, and nobody's like. So there's no way to judge. I think it's misleading if you look at it and think this film.
Oh, it's very misleading. Also, because Netflix never releases its particular. Right? So like we have no idea. So Netflix kind of treats this film the way that the Mirando Corporation hopes to treat Okja. And what we're trying to do is bring this film back to the mountain. So yes.
So I guess in that case, let's move on to the Animal Liberation Front, because god damn, they are fun. They are led by Paul Dano playing Jay, and Stephen Yeun, the translator, who plays K. So we got J and K. And then we've got Blonde, Silver, and Red, which is Daniel Henshaw, Devin Bostick, Silver, and he's the one who's fasting to himself to death. And then Lily Collins as Red. I didn't even recognize her in the first time I watched it, and then I saw the credits, and I was like, holy crap! This is another reason people are going to come back and see this film, because I think she's already something of a star, but I think she's something special. So, yeah, let's talk about the Animal Liberation Front, because there's a lot going on there.
Ugh. There's so much going on there. And oh my heavens, I mean, Paul Dano, just the perfect actor to just ooze sincerity out of every pore and just absolute, it's almost hilarious how genuine he is.
I love it.
It's so beautiful. It's so gorgeous. And again, this is what makes Bong Joon-ho such a brilliant director, is that he understands how to make fun of his heroes without discrediting them, to give them humility. And while AFL is
ALF.
ALF while Alf are heroes, they're not villains. They are not. Bong Joon-ho does not spare them in criticism, which is really beautiful. But also, it doesn't demonize them either, which I really love the way that they're treated in this film.
Well, again, sort of thinking about it. So this is another. Okay, these are Americans, right? This is another kind of American.
Yeah.
These are the kind. Yep. So their intentions are good, but you scratch the surface, and there's a lot of different things going on. There's one There's one character who's particularly weak physically. There's another character who is lacking integrity on a very, foundational level. There is one character who seems so peaceful, but is also capable of incredible violence.
Yes.
There's just and there's just a general, they don't have their shit together. And I think, and forgive me if I'm engaging in Orientalism here in any way, but I just feel like if you're part of a culture that has a relationship to something that is older than 200 years or 100 years or 5 minutes ago, as we have in the United States, and you look at Americans and you look at them the best well-intentioned, and you're still children, which is kind of what's going on with these characters. They're kind of children playing at revolution, and they may do something good.
Yes.
But in the end, and when we get to talking about the grandfather, who I think is one of the really, really a very small part of the film, but a hugely important part of the film, there's something about him that even in his duplicity, there's more integrity to him than all of the ALF people put together. Even though they're doing the right thing, they're probably not, it's one step forward, two steps back with them, kind of, it feels like. And and of course the actors and everyone who's making the movie gets to have fun with it because they're funny. They're the comedy. And I love that their comedy is all about gentleness. I love that they apologize before they board, and they show up, dropping flowers and, telling the guy to buckle up, buckle.
You
just love them.
Great.
You want to hug them like little
so
cute
much.
little babies.
Yes, you're like, oh, you're so precious. Oh, you little idealist. Oh my God, the world hasn't destroyed you yet. Oh my God, it's very sweet. And they do have good.
They have
intentions.
a whole scene. There's a whole scene in this that's all about consent. I loved it.
Yes,
I loved that you have it must be like a 5-minute scene devoted to a consent conversation. When have you ever seen that in a movie? Just that alone.
Yep.
Yeah, I really liked it the first time, and then I watched it the second time, and I was just in awe of, like, the first time it was just there, but then the second time you're like, wow, you really spent a lot of time on this one thing, and you obviously think this is as important as I do. Like, I think that's part of it. And I guess this is probably true of all of his work, but again, I need to give more thought to all of it before I speak authoritatively. But with this, there's just such a strong sense of affinity that I feel for the point of view of this. That it's not super compassionate in what we think of, obviously, as compassion, but ultimately it is. Mm-hmm. The film hurts where it's supposed to hurt, and it mocks where it's supposed to mock.
Yes. Yep.
But it's all very... like, its aim is true, right? It's really, at least for me, when it's making fun of me, I'm welcoming the fun it's making.
Yes.
Because I agree. And if you don't, then, I don't know. Which member of ALF do you feel like you relate to most?
Oh, my gosh. That's difficult. I feel like I'm a little bit of Red and a little bit of J. When I get a little too high and mighty and full of myself, I definitely have J vibes. Because I am a gentle person, but I can.
I think we all want to be
myself.
J. We all want to be J.
We all want to be
I'm
J.
definitely
we
Devin.
We all want to be J.
I'm fasting. I'm making a big deal about it and be like, I can do this.
That character. I feel so.
But they're cartoon characters. They do cartoon character things. They throw marbles out of the back of the truck to make the people fall over to klezmer music. I mean,
they use umbrellas to block tranquilizer darts.
It's so much fun.
In that utterly amazing, incredible scene.
Yeah.
In the mall with "You Build Up My Senses" playing in the background. It's so amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so and then the other thing that's really we're spoiling stuff. So let's talk. The whole idea that translation is sacred in a film that is bilingual, that.
Yep.
I feel like that's one of those things that if a filmmaker does it and you don't like the filmmaker, then it gets made fun of. And if you do like the filmmaker, then you let him get away with it. But that seems like a very direct communication to his audience and the people who work on his, like the distributors of his films and the people who make translations of his work.
Yeah.
And I loved how much the film leaned into that. Like even Stephen Yeun's character, when he jumps out of the truck after he's betrayed her. What's his line to her? It's I wrote it down here.
Oh, you need to
try learning English. It opens new doors.
Try learning English. Yep. But with Stephen Yeun specifically, with his character specifically, what I love about his character so much though is that they are able to receive redemption, and his character is actually the only character in the movie that has a full character cycle. You know what I mean? He starts out idealist. He transgresses because he thinks that it's the good thing to do for Alf. But then immediately learns his lesson that was a terrible
and I
thing
loved
to do.
how in another movie that guy would lie for a while and it would keep us on the hook. And I love that this movie just was like, as soon as he realized that he was in the wrong, he just admitted it. I loved it. Like
that's what I'm saying. And that he took his punishment. He realized the wrong stance that he had taken, and then he put all of his energy into correcting it. And I personally feel that his character is, in a way, the most heroic of the film because he actually learned lessons. Whereas almost none of the other characters actually really learn anything. And grow from
I
it.
think you're writing off Grandpa a little bit because.
Well, no,
That's okay. I see what you're saying.
like...
No, I'm being I'm being difficult. Of course, you're right.
You are, but I'm saying in full. We didn't get to see a full or the full evolution of Grandpa. Whereas with Steven Yeun's character, it's right there. I mean, it follows all the lines. In any other movie, he would be the lead who learns the lesson. But in this film, the person who learns the lesson is one of the secondary characters, which I think is really beautiful because in a way, Steven is us, is the audience. Like often the character that you put your shoes in, or that the screenwriter or author, playwright want you to identify with, is the lead character, right? That's usually the one who gets that progression, that story treatment. And in this, it is not the case. They don't want you to, or at least in my opinion, it doesn't feel like the script is asking you to put yourself in Mija's eyes or in Jake's eyes or in Tilda's. It's very much like, you're Steven Yeun. I really do feel like that he is the stand-in for all of us.
It sounds like maybe you're saying that the one you relate to the most is Steven Yeun's character.
Well, yeah, know what? You're right. You're 100% right. Steven Yeun's character is who I relate to the most because he's the one we see fail, admit his failure, and instead of being bitter and
in another movie he would
it,
also go and join the wrong side and do something, and then he would have to have this moment of apology when he goes down. You're right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. And instead, he does the right thing and is never asked to be celebrated for learning his lesson. And I think that's such an important point that I feel a lot of people will miss.
It's the opposite. He's not. So if what leads to the monstrosity of the Jake Gyllenhaal character and the Tilda Swinton character is the performative nature, and even for a lot of the ALF, the performative nature of their of whatever they're doing, that they're pretending to be good in the world.
Yeah.
Then on the other side of it, sort of what you're talking about with the Steven Yeun character with Kay, is that he does his work for the sake of the work, even the thing he did wrong, he did in silence. It wasn't to and when he realized it was wrong, he didn't care about how it made him look to admit it. And these are all they are all heroic qualities in this film. I still think again, there is an actual hero in this film, Mija.
Right, but he's the one that gets the hero's journey. Like in its standard effect. You know what I mean? Like Misha never does anything wrong. Misha never learns a bad lesson. Like Misha's just pure. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. The standard hero's journey and folly and the learning and the growing, all of that is for Kay.
Okay, I'm just wondering why you don't want to talk about Mija.
Oh, I love Mija. Are you kidding me? What's beautiful about Mija is she's the ideal.
And the young actor who's playing her. Well, it's one of those things. Casting, especially in a role like that, casting is everything. And
And Bong Joon-ho is known for really understanding how to help facilitate casting the correct young actors, because in all of his movies, the casting of often it is a female lead or female secondary. In The Host, you have the daughter. In Snowpiercer, it's also a daughter. And the casting every time in all of his films with that character, which often tends to be female and preteen, is perfection. And that's, that credit has to go to him and the casting director, because I know that Bong Joon-ho has a very, very heavy hand and heavy say in casting, because he uses a lot of the same actors in a lot of his movies. You can tell who he loves, even with his American actors, like Tilda Swinton, very clearly, for obvious reasons. Bong Joon-ho's gonna love her. She's already done 2 of his movies. And I'm sure he would work with her again as soon as he could. It's very clear that he appreciates the craft and the talent that certain actors can bring to a project, which is what I love so much about him. One of the things I love about him most is that he understands how important the right actor is. And to just really allow them to do what they do. And it shows in Bija's performance. It's beautiful, it's understated, but at the same time, that everything she's doing, she is her conviction is so strong, and it never, ever, ever, ever falters. And that's what's so beautiful about that character, and also what he's saying about people in general when we're younger, and how that can get lost as you grow old. That idealism, and that, no, this is the right thing. Why would you even consider doing something different? Of course I'm going to go after Okja. That is my family. She's just so pure, but she's not weak. And it really shows how strong you can be when you're being vulnerable and honest.
Where it really stuck out to me was in the action, when she goes into full-on action star mode.
Yes.
That I totally bought it. Like, that's filmmaking, that's acting. It's a combination. Like, you can't, if it's not there, you're really going uphill, and sometimes the flaws are going to come through. When it's there, even if the direction isn't there, some of the flaws are going to come through. All of these action scenes were just flawless, and the places where I needed to suspend disbelief, I did so completely willingly, because the hand was so sure. Like, there's this moment when she goes and it's going to fall off the cliff, and she's holding onto the rope by one hand, and she grabs her bag and puts it over her head, and that's a moment of that. In another movie, my brain goes, come on, you need both hands. You would have just dropped the bag. But again, the sure-handedness of what got me there and what goes after, and that and they're doing all of this with, it's CGI, so they're doing it with some, some guy dressed up as a snuffleupagus and all of these things. She's acting like there's not a phony moment. And when not a single one. When it is, it's so intentional. And just, if you think about her putting that bag over the top of her head and that shot and holding with one hand, the feeling in your body of that shot is so good that's what I mean, that it invites you to suspend your disbelief, and you do so totally willingly. And that's when you're in the hands of a master. And just like Steven Yeun's character, I want to apologize for not paying attention before. I got scared. People talked about The Host. It was a monster movie. I'm a scaredy cat.
That movie is so brilliant,
yeah,
and it's
great.
really about family, and it's also a huge, like I was saying, all of his movies, massive social commentary.
Everything is great.
He is the master of it. He is the absolute master of pitch perfect social commentary.
Okay, so Seo-hyun was phenomenal in this. She's I'm gonna keep my eye out for I hope I see her in other things. But I keep trying to get there because I'm kind of obsessed with the grandfather character in this film now, because the first time I watched it, I had the feelings you're supposed to have of just like frustration with him, and the way he's just sort of laughing through all of it. It seems insulting and demeaning, and you're with her. And when she has her sort of James Dean moment where she comes in, she takes the pig and she breaks the piggy bank. She's taking pigs, she's breaking pigs. It's pigs all over the place. And yeah, fuck that guy. But then I watched it the second time, and
oh no, he lost his child, and she's all that he had, and he was trying to, as misguided as it was, to protect her.
Well, and here's the thing. This is what I love about this movie. He did ultimately, even though he's a fool. I am a sort of a lowly but long time practicing Buddhist. And so I recognized, maybe it was intentional or maybe it wasn't, a parable that I was taught when I was much younger, which is about basically there's a young person who goes out on a journey, and they're wearing this coat that their grandmother or someone like an elder in their family gave them. And I'm probably butchering the story, so forgive me because I'm eliding it with this. And he goes and he has this adventure in the world, and he ends up being losing everything but this coat. And then at some point he finds that in the lining of the coat, his grandmother or whatever had sewn a precious jewel in there. So he was rich all along, but he didn't know it. And the idea in the parable is that that's like your inherent enlightenment, that we all have this, the nature of the Buddha in ourselves sewn into the lining of our coat, and we don't know it. We're walking around rich and we don't know it. And so that she has like this insulting golden pig that we hate at the beginning of when it's given to her, that at the end, it is the thing that allows her to save Okja. And save this movie, because it would have been so sad if Okja
just the worst.
But it's still sad because all those other ones are going to die, and that's like such a heartbreaking scene.
Right. Well, but also like it makes you wrestle with the fact that not everyone gets the same treatment.
Right. But in this case, this foolish old man and his insulting gift were the key to, it was the only, in the end, he was the ally that mattered. All these other ALF people trying to help and failing her and helping and failing and helping and failing ultimately didn't do more to help her than her goofy, frustrating grandfather back on the mountain. And I just love that.
But it also wasn't his intention.
Doesn't matter. That's I think what is so great about it.
Yes.
Is that his intention was to be himself and love his granddaughter.
Yes.
And be on that mountain and do his thing. And he doesn't care if he looks good or doesn't look good.
No.
He's not performative. His intention is totally good. His thinking is totally fucked. It doesn't matter because his action came from his intention, and it was this stupid golden pig.
The stupid golden
that
pig.
He was able to give to this other stupid golden pig so that she could get back this treasure and be back on the mountain and give us a happy ending. And goddamn, that's some great filmmaking and some great storytelling.
Well, it is, but also...
Yeah.
It also is an absolute highlighter as to why this is a horror film.
Yes.
Because in the end, the only thing that ended up mattering at all was money.
Money, 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 money.
And money and the pursuit of it is the ultimate villain. It's ultimately how you get what you want. And it's how you use it. That determines,
Who knew?
Your
Eric
makeup.
Clapton was right all along.
Right.
It's in the way that you use it. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so any other? I feel like we're giving this film the love it deserves, and who knows? Maybe on Netflix, a lot more people are watching it. Maybe there's a whole subset of people who just already have watched this film and are like, "What are you talking about? The world isn't wrong about this." But so if you know where that club is, we'd like to be invited.
Basically, everyone I know that have seen it loves it, and everyone that I've forced to watch it loves it. But it is definitely one of those movies that when I bring it up, people are like, huh? Most people haven't heard of it. And really, that was always the host for me. And it, is less so now that Bong Joon-ho rightfully won Parasite, which those of us who have been following him forever, all the people that had never heard of him going, what the hell? This doesn't make sense. Those of us who watch his movies,
yeah,
obviously
but
were
like
like
Kubrick doesn't never got an Academy Award. Not to downplay it, but it's one of those things where here on The World Is Wrong, we're a big believer in films that don't get nominated or win. But you were on our Oscars episode. It was
no, exactly. And the thing is,
all those wins kept him from being on our Oscars episode. Think of how much you could have raved about Parasite.
But that was the one movie, and it took over a decade for people to realize his genius. Because Okja, The Host, Snowpiercer, all of those movies, in my personal opinion, are just as brilliant and groundbreaking as Parasite.
Have you seen Mother?
It's just no one was paying attention.
Yeah.
Like all of those films, but no one was paying attention.
Including me. Sorry people.
But I recognized it in The Host immediately. I was like, this is
you're right.
This is one of the single best directors ever. I mean, it's always been there. He didn't have to learn it or grow into it. It almost feels like his point of view was finely tuned from the minute he started making movies, which is so beautiful. And I love that the world was surprised by Parasite, because that means so many more people now get to go back and discover all these movies they were wrong about. And this is absolutely one of them. I also feel very strongly about Snowpiercer. It got very horribly treated. That was his first American release. And I will still stand by the fact that that is an utterly brilliant and genius film that was not given its credit in any way, shape, or form. Tilda Swinton in that movie as well has been one of my goal Halloween costumes for years. Is to do her in the white coat with the boot on her head. I adore him, and I really do feel like while Okja is also a terrifying horror film and one of his scariest when you really, really look at what he's exploring, it's also simultaneously one of his sweetest films. In just that relationship between her and Okja, and it's so lovely. And while it's horrific, there's also just so much beautiful sweetness in that relationship. get that in the host. you don't get the sweetness between the sewer monster and the trapped girl.
You know what's so strange though is that because I watched the host after I watched Okja.
Oh, did you watch it recently?
Yeah, like
Okay.
just like I went on a full. I had seen Snowpiercer before, so I didn't rewatch that, and I saw Parasite. But when I saw Parasite, I didn't even connect it with Snowpiercer. So
Right.
I gave myself a crash course in Bong Joon-ho this week. Thank you. Like,
You're welcome.
look at how much better my life is because of you,
Yes.
Jen Brown.
Seriously,
I'm
not joking. He is my favorite director, and I know that my life is personally better from viewing his movies. So, like, I really do try to force in the sweetest, kindest way his movies on everyone I know if they haven't heard of them. And I was at the Parasite premiere at Fantastic Fest, and he was there in person, and seeing him in person and just having a moment where I passed him and we locked eyes and he just looked at me, and I didn't say hi to him. I didn't tell him what his movies mean to me, but we just had a slight moment where we were two of the only people outside during a quiet moment, and our eyes locked, and I could tell he could just tell. And it meant everything to me just being able to see him in the flesh, because how much he's brought to my life. And I know that may sound utterly insane to some people because I didn't even shake his hand and I didn't actually talk to him, but just having that moment meant, I feel so silly because I'm getting choked up, but it meant the world to me because his films have given me so much.
And as we have learned, sharing air,
Yes.
just sharing the same air in a closed space with someone is an intimate interaction. And I've definitely had similar experiences where it was just, wow, I'm in the same room. Like, I can feel the energy off of that person who, and this is creepy in some ways if you want to see it that way. But this person who has had such a profound effect on me, the energy of them the energy that I am projecting upon them is so intense that I don't want to put them through that. That would be really unfair because they're just hanging. But I'm just gonna be whatever. I'm gonna surrender to the fact that I'm a little bit of a creep, and I'm gonna stand in the corner and just be like, oh my God, I'm in the same room as Paul McCartney.
Right. Right. I had that with George Romero.
He knows that he's Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
I'm not freaking him out.
Yeah. Yeah. I had that with George Romero. I didn't wait in his line at a con, but I just stand at a safe distance and watched him interact with others, because I was like, this is what I can do safely without losing it. And I felt it. It was that same experience where you're just like, oh my God, the energy. Oh, it's just beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, and so the other thing about this film, and this is a kind of a crazy synchronicity, is that it's co-written by Jon Ronson. And Jon Ronson wrote Frank, the film we covered at the beginning of the season. And I knew I loved that film, and I'd read about him, and I sort of had heard the name, but I hadn't really connected all the dots. And then for the release of that episode, I was doing the posts for Instagram because it's Brian's birthday week, so he takes the week off, and I do the Instagram posts. Usually he does the Instagram posts.
Right.
And you had just mentioned Okja, and when I go to tag Jon Ronson, because he has an Instagram account.
I should be following that. I don't know why I'm not. I'm a huge fan.
Well, so basically I tagged him, and he said something nice about it, and I said something kind of snarky. I didn't mean it snarky. He's like, "Oh, this is great. I really liked it." And I was like, "Well, this is crazy because we're going to be covering Okja in just a couple of weeks." And so I guess the world is wrong about you. And he's like, actually, I'm doing just fine. And so I wrote to him and was like, on the private, and was like, hey, didn't mean to insult you. The world being wrong about you is a compliment in our books. And he's like, oh, no problem. I really dug your episode.
Oh, I'm sure he understood that.
Yeah. So basically, so now I'm interacting with this person who has written 2 films that are phenomenal. Like really, like Frank, sort of like I was saying about the performances. You can take an okay script, and if you direct it right, you can make it into a good movie. Or you can have a great script, and if you mess it up, doesn't matter if it was great. But when it's pitch perfect, then the screenplay is not making any mistakes. And it's also pitch perfect. So, and in both these films, Frank and Okja, that's the feeling I got. And not in any way that was look at me either. I wouldn't have thought of them as being similar if I didn't see the name. But then seeing the name, there's a similar quality in that neither of them does anything wrong. Which is in itself in a movie is a very high bar to achieve. So then I told you about this, and it turns out you are even a bigger fan. I'm like with Bong Joon-ho. I guess I'm late to the party on John Ronson, but you're an actual fan. So
huge.
Tell me about it.
So, some people may know this, others may not. He writes a lot of books, and I'm very familiar with his books, and in particular, one of my favorite books ever of all time is by him, and it's called The Psychopath Test. And it really, really comes across a lot of the research that he did for the Psychopath Test very clearly was utilized when writing this script. Because the Psychopath Test, if you're not familiar with this book, is all about how there's this theory that there's only, I forget the exact percentage, but the exact percentage of psychopaths in the world is very small. But there's a theory that because of their specific attributes, this very small section of the world's population actually rules a majority of it because of the way their brains are wired as psychopaths. And this book is brilliant. Everyone should read it, just as for its comments and statements on society and psychiatry and all of that in general. It's just a brilliant book. But also, on a personal note, I have really terrible chronic anxiety and GAD, and OCD and ADHD. I have a lot of things. I am treated. I am on medications that manage them. But at the time that I read this book, I had not found the right combination of medicine. So my anxiety was really, really controlling me at that point in my life. And I had actually been having a constant panic attack for 2 years when I read this book. And the beginning of the book broke me in a good way because I felt seen in a way and heard in a way that I never really had, specifically in relation to my anxiety, because of the way that John Ronson wrote about his anxiety and his struggles with anxiety and the depression that comes from crippling anxiety. And I'd never in my life read anyone describe it so accurately to where I was like, oh my God, yes, this, to the point that it has been my, like, if there's anyone in my life that isn't understanding my struggles or what I go through with the level of anxiety that I have, I have them read this very specific portion that he wrote in the beginning of the book, where he is brutally honest about what his brain goes through in order to be like, this is it. This is how I feel. I'd never been able to write it out acutely. And he took everything I wanted to try to explain to people about what I was going through. And he just hit the nail on the head. And it has meant so much to me. Because as many people know, when you feel seen, regardless of what you need to feel seen for, you feel less alone. And while I knew other people had anxiety, I had lots of friends that had anxiety. I read about it, I talked about it a million times, but there was something about the way that he was able to articulate it that was so akin to my personal experience that it legitimately changed my life. And shortly thereafter, I had a massive breakdown and then was able to finally get the help that I needed. But yeah, I love his work a lot. I think he brings a lot of himself to what he writes. And that's why it feels so genuine, because he is so brutally honest and unafraid of talking about his weaknesses. And it, I write and, I act and I am a creator. I'm in the artistic field. And to be able to see someone else who's also in the artistic field that has also had their anxiety control them in such a horrible way, and still be able to create through it is very inspiring for me. So yeah, his work means a lot to me. I really do. And I highly, highly suggest specifically anyone who hasn't read The Psychopath Test to read The Psychopath Test. It is also a horror novel in the way that it makes you a little terrified for society. But it's a really incredible and insightful book.
Point taken. John Ronson, good.
Yes.
Psychopaths, not so much.
Not so much. But actually, there.
I guess we need them.
But here's the thing, though. This is why you need to read the book, because there's a spectrum, and not every psychopath uses their sociopathic tendencies for evil. And just because you're a sociopath, it doesn't mean that you are inherently going to be.
Wait, sociopath? There's a difference. Sociopath and psychopath. They're not the same thing.
They're not the same.
Okay. Those are two groups of people I don't want to offend.
No, well, you can't actually. That's part of their their makeup. They aren't affected by what you and I say, really.
Well, see, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I don't have a problem with them, because it's people who get offended that are usually the root of most of my problems. So, yeah, I guess, yeah, right on. Okay, well, here you are making an argument for psychopaths, sociopaths, and books about them.
Oh, wait. There was one last thing that has to be mentioned that I wanted to make sure we brought up and I forgot, and I'll make it really, really quick.
Go for it.
We've talked a lot about Mija and Grandpa and Alf and Mirando, but we haven't really spoken much about Okja herself. And the thing I want to point out is that what makes Okja such endearing and real character, despite it being obviously CGI, is that they used a real actor to voice Okja. And Lee Jeong-eun does an absolutely stellar job as the voice of Okja. And by voice, I mean animal voice. There's no, Okja doesn't talk like human words.
Oh, except for that beautiful musical number where they Okja sings a duet with Mija in the forest after the big action adventure thing.
Oh, I would give anything for that to have actually been in the movie.
If that beautiful hug, if there was that beautiful hug, and then all of a sudden Okja starts to sing,
it's breaking out. Oh my God, that would be so brilliant. That makes me want to see this as a musical. Why is no one making Okja a stage musical?
That would be awesome. Because you know what? I was already. I'm sorry. Now in my mind, I just kept hearing Okja as Billy Squires "Stroke Me." Okja, Okja, oh, Okja, and the way she says like Okja, the way she says it, you could sample that and put that in, and that's a real missed opportunity. I feel like.
Yes.
And that's what they could have danced to in the forest.
It would have been beautiful.
That would have been terrible. I'm not actually
suggesting really bad.
this. These are just the things. A great movie makes you wonder on it.
Oh, 100%.
Radio 8 Ball.
Andras here. When I'm not co-hosting The World is Wrong podcast, I'm hosting and producing the Radio 8 Ball podcast, where we answer questions by picking songs at random, like picking musical tarot cards. We've hosted musical divinations for people like John C. Reilly, Patricia Arquette, Tig Notaro, and Fred Armisen, and hosted over 200 songwriters, providing the randomly chosen answers from Inara George and Dan Byrne to Mose Allison and Alan Toussaint. That's Radio 8 Ball, all one word. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and download our app from the iTunes App Store.
One dream, one wish, one piece of mind. A podcast hosted by Nico White about One Piece by Ichiro Oda on Paper House Network. We'll see you every Monday.
Dear listener, if you are just discovering our podcast, you can find all of our episodes on our website at theworldiswrongpodcast.com. You can also write to us at contact@theworldiswrongpodcast.com or follow us on Instagram at theworldiswrongpodcast. And now, back to the show.
8 notes, scale an octave. Master the scale, and you master the score.
Great interview.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's funny, the last episode, you talked about Tim Conway and Don Knotts movies. And do you remember their movie, The Private Eyes? Remember where they're like detectives in sort of like an Agatha Christie sort of thing?
Vaguely, perhaps.
But there's a character in it that's a pig man that Tim Conway calls a muklar, I believe. And he has this theory about this pig guy. Another like genetically engineered pig person or pig monster named Muklar. Another great Wrongtober pick.
Okay.
The Private Eyes.
I'll have to check that out. So, well, there are a few things. There's a couple of little corrections that I need to make. One is that there was an actor who we referenced who plays the liaison between the farmers and the corporation. And he's an actor who's been in several of Bong Joon-ho's films. His name is Byun Hee-bong. I think I'm pronouncing that right, Byun Hee-bong. And I didn't have that name at the ready during the show, so I wanted to correct that. And I also needed to correct, I related a Buddhist parable during that episode, but I totally butchered it. And so since I went and found the correct one, I just wanted to share it here so that people who are fans of Buddhism aren't going to get offended. So here is the parable of the jewel in the robe. It tells of an impoverished man who goes to visit a close, wealthy friend, not his grandmother, as I said when I was talking earlier. Being treated to wine, he becomes drunk and falls asleep. The wealthy friend must go out on business, but before leaving, he sews a priceless jewel into the lining of his sleeping friend's robe. When the poor man awakens, he has no idea that he has been given the jewel. He then sets out on a journey. To provide himself with food and clothing, he searches with all his energy, encountering great hardship. Being always in want, he is content with whatever little he can obtain. Later, he happens to meet his old friend, who is shocked at his poverty and shows him the jewel in the robe. The man realizes for the first time that he possesses a priceless jewel and is overjoyed. And this is a parable that relates to the idea that we all have enlightenment within us, and we're walking around with this jewel in our robe that we're unaware of. So that parallel is in the film with the golden pig. And I want to get your take on Bong Joon-ho.
So I haven't seen a lot. It's a sad kind of gap for me. Like, I feel bad that I haven't watched more of his stuff. But what I've seen is really good. The first one I saw was Memories of Murder, which is incredible. Like, did you watch that one yet?
I have not seen that one yet.
It's really good because it's basically like, it's very, very much like Zodiac, the David Fincher movie, where it's just like a really good, slow, methodical sort of like procedural, like how to try to catch this serial killer sort of movie. And the tension in there is so good, and the filmmaking is so top notch. Like, I highly recommend, if no one's seen it, to watch Memories of Murder. It's very, very scary, very good. That would be a great Wrongtober movie. And then Snowpiercer, which I love, because I love any movie that has a video game plot. And that movie totally feels like a video game, where it's like going from one train car to the other, slowly moving your way to the big boss at the end. I love movies that are plotted like Donkey Kong. And that movie's so good. And it's also nice to see Chris Evans not in a Marvel movie and realize that he's actually a really good actor. So yeah, that's those are the two that I've seen. And I didn't see Parasite. I haven't seen The Host. I haven't seen Mother. Like, I really it's definitely on my list. And of course, just like how you are, my list is very long. So being a movie fan means that you're always kind of behind, because there's so much to watch in this world. But he's definitely like coming up on my list of like, I need to watch the rest. Because you can tell just in the two that I saw that it's someone with a very unique take, and someone who is going to, I think, keep making great things. He's just going to be one of those directors that you can trust that'll make something that's not just some cash grab, Or if he made a cash grab, it'll be a very fascinating cash grab. So, yeah, I'm excited to keep. I know I need to watch Parasite. It's that weird thing of if it won Best Picture, I run away from it. So I need to overcome that. I'm wrong about that. I need to run to Parasite. I feel, based on other people's opinions, that was one of the years where the Oscars got it right. So I need to do it.
Yeah, I need to watch it again, having kind of got my mind a little bit into getting Bong Joon-ho's cinematic language. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, go back and see this film. There's so much good, joyful, wonderful stuff in it. It really, it shouldn't be a film that gets a reputation as a downer, because it is so not.
That's definitely the reputation it has. So I'm going to watch a not downer movie.
Yeah,
then with
that's
good.
You know what's
good to know.
Well, and this is the other part that we got into in the interview, is the John Ronson connection, because he wrote Frank and he wrote Okja, or co-wrote Okja. I think he probably co-wrote Frank as well. But I hadn't sort of connected the dots, and Jen helped me connect the dots in the interview. But this guy is such an interesting person, and those two films have such a tone. It makes me very excited to dig into his work some more. He also wrote the book that Men Who Stare at Goats was based upon. Did you see that film?
Oh. No, I didn't. Did you see that? It looked sort of like it was trying to do like a Coen Brothers thing. but it's not a Coen Brothers thing. Or maybe they produced it. I don't know.
I've seen it twice. I saw it when it came out, and I went back and rewatched it. And it is a very... I think it's better... It was good then, but I think it's better now. Just because everyone who's in it, there was sort of a little bit of an overload of George Clooney and Ewan McGregor and Jeff Bridges. And now looking back at it's like, oh, well, that's actually... It's good. It's more fun to see them than it was the year that it came out, and the story is a true story and is wild and is I really enjoyed it. And he also did Stanley Kubrick's Boxes, which I haven't seen. Are you?
Oh, is that the documentary where they went through his archives or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay.
And have you seen that?
No.
No, neither. I've been trying to track that one down, and it's been hard for me to find. I'm looking forward to seeing what he writes, seeing other films that he has written or is going to write, because I think he mostly focuses on his books. But if you take Men Who Stare at Goats, which I don't think he did write, Stanley Kubrick's Boxes, Frank, and Okja, that's a very intriguing start to my explorations. So more on him.
And he's on his way to being in the World Is Wrong Hall of Fame at the end of this year.
Oh yes, very much so. Okay, well, just want to let you all know, please do write to us if you want to take us to task for how far behind we are on the Bong Joon-ho train. Although we both have seen Snowpiercer, so we're okay on the train stuff. But in general, we have a lot of work to do with Bong Joon-ho. You want to take us to task about that? Please write to us at contact@theworldiswrongpodcast.com. Also, if you want to say wonderful things about Jen's performance or appearance on the show, we'll sing those praises. So if you're any Jen Brown fans out there, you want to write about how excited you are that we had her on the show, please do. You can also find all of our episodes at theworldiswrongpodcast.com. And you can also find us on social media. We have two accounts. One, we have our Instagram account, which is what Brian kind of runs over there for all the people who want to look at the nice pictures in the video. And I handle the Twitter account where we argue about despicable artists and the wrongness of the world. No, we try and avoid that. Try and keep it positive for us and our 33 followers. If you'd like to add to that number, come over and find us at World Is Wrong Pod on Twitter. And of course, let's see. We should also mention that you have another podcast called The Director's Wall, where people can check you out with AJ Gonzalez talking about the films of Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah, but this month of Wrongtober, we're taking a break from Coppola, and we're going to cover M. Night Shyamalan's Old. Because it's horror, it's scary, and because the season before Coppola we did Shyamalan, so we have to do a follow-up, and it just happens to be a horror movie, so that's going to be the episode coming out sometime this month. Might already be up by the time this plays, I don't know. But definitely somewhere in this month, that episode's going to drop, and I'm very excited.
And for those of you who are interested, you can always go and check out the many episodes that exist of Radio 8 Ball, my other podcast, where we answer questions by picking songs at random and interpreting those randomly chosen songs as the answers to the questions, like picking musical tarot cards. And next week, we got a really, really scary film for you. Very exciting episode. Brian, you want to tell us what it is?
Don's Plum! Woo!
Yeah, a very, very frightening film. You may have heard of it, and if you have, then you know that it's a film that is shrouded in controversy. And if you haven't heard of it, then you're going to on our next episode, where I'll be speaking with one of the film's writer-producers, Dale Wheatley. And that is a name that perhaps strikes fear into the heart of many in Hollywood who are afraid of the story he has to tell. We will not be stopped. So get ready. I don't know if it's not an easy film to find, but check it out. Find it. Do what you can to track it down. It's not really available in the United States, but But there are ways to track down copies, and so if you're of a mind to do so, go for it. And maybe look under Tobey Maguire's bed, and look in the a hole in the back of Leonardo DiCaprio's yard.
This is getting terrifying. This movie, I'm getting scared.
Yeah, well, check it out. It's another entry into our exploration of Wrongtober, and I guess that brings us to a close this happy little, scary little episode about Okja and everything it entails. And of course, we need to thank the fabulous Jen Brown for being a guest on the show. I mean, really, you're the one who should be thanking her.
Thank you. No, I think it's great that she keeps coming back. I feel like it's gonna keep happening, and it's good. She's now secured her place in the 2022 Oscars. So,
absolutely. And of course, we hope that we'll be able to get her back now that her show Genre Graveyard has been picked up by Roku. Who knows? She could be, this could be the last time she even returns our phone calls. So I'm glad we got this in before it was too late.
Yeah.
Thanks for nothing, Brian.
What?
You didn't watch the movie? You didn't do the show with me? Anyway, no, I don't want to make you feel bad.
This is the price to pay to be the mayor of Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
I'm a busy man.
You are. And that's the price I pay for staying in Olympia where nobody wants to have anything to do with me. So I have plenty of time to work on this podcast. So I guess who better than me to be the one to be the bearer of such sad news. But as you probably know by now, if you've been listening to this podcast, the world is wrong. And it's probably wrong about you.
My name is Jay.
쟤는 Jay. 나는 K라고 해.
I'm red.
Silver.
I'm blonde.
난 미자예요. 얘는 옥자.
I'm Mija. This is Okja.
We are animal lovers.
우리 동물 사랑해.
We rescue animals from slaughterhouses, zoos, labs. We tear down cages and set them free. This is why we rescued Okja.
우리 도살장 실험실 부시고 동물들 빼내는 거야. 그래서 옥자도 거기에서 빼냈어.
정말 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
For 40 years, our group has liberated animals from places of abuse.
우리 맨날 해.
Is that it?
Yeah. Go on.
It's very important. She gets every word.
It's all right. That's it.
We inflict economic damage on those who profit from their misery. We reveal their atrocities to the public, and we never harm anyone, human or non-human. That is our 40-year credo.
우리는 동물 괴롭힌 사람들 싸우고. What was the second thing you said?
We reveal their atrocities.
동물학대 다 폭로하고 그치만 투쟁할 때 사람들 절대 안 다치는 거 40년 전통이야.
Whoa! Are you okay, Silver?
I'm fine.
You okay?
I'm good. I'm
He
good.
still hasn't eaten anything?
No, he's still trying to leave the smallest footprint on the planet that he can.
All food production is exploitative.
Try this.
Mm-mm.
Come on, it's just a tomato.
Ripened in ethylene gas, transported in trash.
I admire your conviction, Silver, but your pallid complexion concerns me.
Hi, I'm Brian.
And I'm AJ.
And we have a podcast called The Director's Wall.
Examining a filmmaker's career, film by film. First up was M. Night Shyamalan, then Francis Ford Coppola. Who's next? Is there anything to this whole auteur theory? Find out on
The Director's Wall.
Subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or your preferred listening platform.
Okay, so there is one thing we shared before before we recorded all of this. So when I watched Okja last night for the second time, I was watching it with my girlfriend who was traumatized by it. Like, she was just like, it's you see a film for the first time and it moves you, and then you were seeing it for the second time and I'm sort of taking notes and I turn around and she's shaking and crying, and it's like,
that was me. That was me the first time I saw this movie.
Yeah.
It traumatized the fucking piss out of me.
Right. So, and then afterwards I was just sort of consoling her. So I didn't stop the film, and it ran till the end. And then there was this whole end scene, sort of like at the end of a Marvel movie, a little teaser scene that I had not looked for. And then and it's great. And then when I got you on the phone today, I asked you if you had seen it, and you hadn't. And so you watched it. And it's so if you've watched the film, you may not have. If you didn't watch till the very end, you really should have, because this last scene really ties. It doesn't really tie it all together, but emotionally, you get one more taste of the ALF, and it's really simple, but it's really great. And the tie off, a little bow, is they add a sixth member to their group, which is played by Ji-hoon Park, and he was the sort of stoned driver who was, and I hate that I don't know the name of this actor, because he's the one actor who's worked a lot, I think, at least more times with Bong Joon-ho, but basically the guy who was the liaison between the farmers that Mija is part of and the company, the Mirando Corporation, the guy who sells them out and gets pooped on, and he's sort of a comedic character and he's great. But his driver, who's really great through the whole scene, in the scene where he sort of turns on him, he shows up at the end as the new member of the ALF, and it's so great to have him show up again, because he was the one guy I was thinking, God, I feel like I could have had a little bit more of him, and then you got it.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Because he steals the movie in that bit where he's like, Mirando's fucked.